The sun is up, the day is wide open, and life still has so much to give. Every laugh, every step, every shared moment says the story is still unfolding beautifully. You are not finished yet. Your story continues.
Most people think life follows a straight line. Education, career, retirement. But for many, that line changes. Sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and sometimes by a moment they never expected. This is Not Finished Yet, a podcast about people who started again and discovered their most interesting chapter was still ahead. Each episode shares real stories of reinvention, the risks, the decisions, and what it actually takes to build something new later in life. Because the truth is, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Can I just add that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of any organisations, employers, or partners connected to them. Before we start, a quick note. A large number of people who listen to the podcast haven't yet subscribed. If you find these conversations valuable, hit subscribe or follow on your platform. It makes a huge difference and helps us keep sharing these stories. Now, let's get into this week's story.
There we go. So, thank you, Paul, for coming on. I just normally get straight into it, so I don't want to keep you too long. So look, most people don't wake up one day completely lost. They drift into it. They build careers that look successful on the outside, but inside something feels off. Today's guest, Paul Comfort, is on a mission to help people reconnect with what really truly drives them. Paul is an author of Find Your X Factor, which we're really going to be interested in getting into what that's about, and seasoned leader across government, transportation and media. After decades of leadership and conversations with high performers, he uncovered the powerful truth. Fulfillment doesn't come from chasing the passion alone, but it comes from aligning what energizes you with what you're built to do well. If you ever feel stuck, successful but unfulfilled, or unsure what your next move should be, the conversation, this one in particular, is for you. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
And just let the listeners know where you are about in the world, Paul.
Yeah, I'm on the East Coast of the United States near Annapolis, Maryland.
Lovely. So let's get straight into your background. You reached the top in multiple careers. What did success look like for you early on?
Yeah, so actually, Mark, if I go way back on my mom's side, we're Welsh, and came over on one of the ships in the late 1600s. The Kimballs did from Wales back then. So I've got some connection there to the motherland. So for me, Mark, I started out my career in public transportation. It was the first real job I had right out of college, and I kind of fell into it as a result of my interest in local government. I was interested in being involved here in America. We have what's called counties. There's 3,000 counties. It's the basis of local governments where school systems run from, local police departments, planning and zoning, parks, all that kind of stuff is on the local level. And so I got involved, ran for office, ran for county commissioner, which is one of the people that run the government. It's the executive and legislative branch combined. And I lost, but I met a guy. That's the story of my life. I met a guy during the campaign, and this guy was running for office too. His name was Irving, and he was head of the local office on aging. And so we both lost our races, but we made a good connection, and he said, "Look, Paul, I've got 2 jobs open. I know you want to be in local government. One runs the senior centers in the county, and the other is a brand new position, transportation coordinator. I've got a 1-year grant to fund it, and I think, either one of them you'd be great at. Which one would you like to do?" And I said, "I don't know. Which one do you think I should do?" And he said, "Well, why don't you try the transportation one? It's brand new. You can make your mark, et cetera, there." And so here I am now, 38 years later, in this industry of public transportation and local government. I later got involved in that as well as an elected official, winning the office I tried to win, 25 years earlier, and actually winning. So success for me looked like in my very first job out of college. I was 22 years old, the county's first transportation coordinator. First, we started with a very small operation. It grew. The commissioners asked me to start an actual public transit system in the county, which I did. I created County Ride, which is still around today. created the routes, built the schedules, bought the buses, went out and actually put the bus stop signs in the ground with our public works department, did it all. And I learned from a small operation how to do many things, which is one of the key principles I think that's in my book, Find Your X Factor. It is do not despise the day of small beginnings, like it says in the good book, right? Because you learn so much if you're doing a lot of things in a small operation rather than if you're pigeonholed in one particular silo in a larger operation. And so our system did great. We won all kinds of awards. In 1991, County Ride won the award for the best small bus system in America, just a few years after we opened it. And so that really began my career. I started getting recruited, et cetera. And so that's what success looked like to me, was creating something from scratch, the County Ride transit system.
Excellent. So was there a moment where you realised something wasn't aligned?
Well, what I realized was that early on I saw a thread through my life, which is I leaned into public communication. I remember, Mark, back, I know this is a show for people over 40. We're talking about my childhood, but like Freud said, it all goes back to there, right? So, but I remember being 10 years old. Remember we used to have cassette tape recorders, taping myself, with my little high voice, pretending to be on radio. And I knew I wanted to be in radio. I knew I wanted to be in TV. I wanted to be in newspapers. I wanted to communicate my thoughts to the public. And so that's what I started leaning into, even as a young man. Before I got my first job, as soon as I could, I got a job in radio as a DJ at a local radio station. And I ended up running the station on Saturdays all by myself and starting a talk show called Comfort's Corner, where I would interview people, eventually winding up in the front window of a store in our downtown county seat called Centerville. It was Callahan's Gas and Appliance was the store. And I would take over their window Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. People would be walking by, the street, and they would see me interviewing local celebrities and people like that as, a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old. And so that's what I realized, what I needed to integrate that into my regular life. And so I had a part-time job for 16 years doing that, and then eventually wove that into my full-time gig so that it became a big part of all my jobs. And then eventually, when I retired after 30 years in the industry as head of the Baltimore transit system called the MTA, I was able to go full-time, combining my interest in media and my expertise in transit and creating the Transit Unplugged podcast TV show universe.
At that crossroads, what did the misalignment get? Let's know, how did that misalignment feel like personally to you?
Yeah, well, it felt like there was a job I had for a while in Washington, D.C. that I didn't really enjoy. And I figured out it's because, and there's a chapter in my book called When You Hate Your Job, because I really did end up hating that job. And I was kind of trapped because I was making decent money and I didn't want to quit and, take less money. But I hated going to work every day. And a big part of the reason was because, I was disrespected, unappreciated, wasn't able to use my core skill sets, micromanaged, all those kind of things that most people hate about their jobs. But also there really wasn't an outlet for me to do that. The only thing I could figure out, Mark, was to be that kind of like communicator, was I volunteered to do the new employee orientation on the first day they would come into our operations. And that gave me a chance to talk in front of a group, to explain to them what the big picture was, which I think is always missing when employees come into an organization. They're pigeonholed right away and they don't understand where they fit in the big picture. So what my favorite time of the week was? It was Mondays when I would do my orientation. I would always look forward to that. So finding something that you can be passionate about at your work, even if it's a volunteer where you don't get paid any extra money, it's important to keep your morale up and your spirits up when you're operating a job which you don't really enjoy.
So before we get into, the core concept of the X Factor, what led you to the idea originally of the X Factor?
Yeah. Well, I figured, I calculated pretty early on that, we're always told as young people, follow your dreams. You go to your commencement speech in high school and college, and that's great, but that's only half the equation. I've seen a lot of people try to follow their dreams and fail miserably because they didn't have the skills required. I figured this out early on. We had a band when I was in college. I play piano and sing, and so I formed a band like a lot of us do in our youth, called Sons of Thunder. We made a record. We toured locally in the area where I live, in the Mid-Atlantic area, and we were okay. We were all passionate about it. but we weren't, we weren't really good, pro quality. I had my friends in the band, with guitars and drums and singers and lights and sound and all that. But we didn't have those 10,000. We may have gotten up to 10,000 hours, like the Beatles did in Hamburg, etc. When they got really tight. So I remember going into the recording studio in Washington, D.C., Studio House North, and this recording engineer, after we recorded our 6 songs, I said, all right, give me your real take. Are we good? Are we good enough to make it pro? Because that's, we all want that when we're young. And he said, you're good, but you're not great. And that was the truth. And so as I got to the end of my college experience, I realized, we've been putting all our time and effort into practice. I was going to college, working part-time, and then all the other time I'd be practicing, playing gigs. All of our money, we'd go back into buying equipment for it. But I realized, Mark, that we just weren't good enough to make it pro. We didn't have the opportunities. There wasn't a line that I could see to success. We could keep doing what we were doing, playing gigs in the weekend for a few $100, but I wasn't going to be able to live on that. It had to be split among 10 people. And so I just figured it out. My first real adult decision. Okay, it is my passion. I love it, and I really want to do it full time. But the reality is, we're not good enough. We don't have the opportunities in front of us. We don't have the connections. We're not going to be able to make it. And I'm going to be married in a few months. So I pulled the band together, and I said, all right, guys, are we going to do this or not? Because I think not. And kind of everybody said, yeah, I guess you're right. We were at the precipice of adulthood. So I made an adult decision. All right, we're going to break up the band. It doesn't mean that music still won't be part of all of our lives, but we can't be putting all the effort into this kind of hobby, which is taking over our lives. And so the concept was, right then I figured out, you can have all the passion in the world, but unless you have the ability and the opportunity to get paid for it, you cannot make that your career. And so shortly after that, that's when I jumped into the transportation gig. And later on, Mark, when I became successful, and what I was doing, I was invited back to be the commencement speaker at my college when I was head of the Maryland Transit Administration. And what do you think I talked about? This is maybe 15 years ago, I didn't call it your X Factor then, but I talked about, not just following your dreams. That's the inspiration you get from all these speakers.
Passion's not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough, man. It's only half the equation.
So talk about the intersection of what energizes you and what you're naturally good at,
Yeah. So I think we can all figure it out, right? The book is called Follow Your Personal Treasure Map to Purpose. Find your X Factor. In the back it says you don't have to blow up your life. You just have to lean into these things some, and you'll find opportunities when you start looking for them. But the very first step, Mark, is to figure it out. And a lot of us, we are, I think we're too consumed with everything going on outside of us to take some time to look inside. But I encourage people in the book, there's tools. I have a website, findyourxfactor.ai, where you can go and look at a free assessment where you can use it as a tool to figure out what is your X and Y axis, right? Your X would be called your interests. What are the things as you look back in your life that have always motivated you? What are your hobbies? And not just the hobby itself, but what's behind it? I mean, if you start looking at, okay, I love hiking, I love, boating, I love, a lot of outdoor activities. Maybe it's being outside that is the thing you love, that interests you. You love all the stuff outside. It may not just be the fact that you're on a boat, and back on a ski. It's that you love not being cooped up in an office. So, that may be your interest, is to be outside. You may be mechanical. Maybe then you look at your abilities. What do people come to you for help? I can look at one of my grandkids, Emmett, who when he was 3 or 4 years old, he's over at my house and he's looking at the light, trying to figure out how it works. He's mechanical natured. He's trying to figure it out like an engineer as a 4-year-old, and he's just continued that. So look back and see, what does people come to you for over your life, and notice your skills for. And what is your core skills and what are your core interests? And then figure out where they can intersect. And it could be you're in a job where you have a lot of skills, but you don't have a lot of interest, like the one I was mentioning earlier, the job I hated. I was in transportation. I was managing an operation. I had 1,000 employees working for me, making great money, but it didn't tap into my core interest of connection with people and communication with them. And so I had to introduce that into my job by volunteering for something. I had to lean into it just enough where it kept me, where I woke up in the morning, I wasn't angry every day about going to work. Although
but you
I
were good
was.
at the job, weren't you? That's the thing.
I was really good. I was
good at it, but it was draining.
That's right. It was very good, but it
how
didn't
did that
fulfill
show up in it? So being good at something and being drained by it, how does that show up in everyday life?
Yeah, well, there's the example, right? The example is you're driving home like I did multiple times, talking on the phone with your spouse, and you're saying, I hate this job, because, I'm stuck in it. I feel captive because I can't bail. We've got a family, we got a mortgage, we got all, so I can't just quit. And all the other jobs that were being offered to me were all $50,000 less. I got kids in college, all that stuff. I can't afford to do that. And so I'm captive in a job I don't really enjoy, where I'm not respected, and I don't get to do anything I really love, or the main things I love. I mean, there were parts of the job that were okay, but I loved helping people, and that's a job we were doing there, but it didn't tap into my core passion. So that's what it looks like. It looks like it's draining you. You come home, you don't want to go to work, you wake up Monday morning, you were working for the weekends or the nights when you can go out and do the things you love. That's not sustainable long term.
No, so it's job title, salary, that status often traps people, doesn't it? What's going on psychologically then when someone knows something's off but doesn't act? What do you think?
Yeah, you're fighting against yourself, aren't you? And you feel inner turmoil as a result of that. That's why I talk in my book and just I do a lot of speaking around the world at conferences about being a fully integrated person. And I believe that's where the dunamos power resides. The Greeks called it, it's the root word for dynamite, right? So that dynamite power, you see people when they come into their X factor, they exhibit that kind of power, and that usually, because you're waking up every day, like Edison said, I never worked a day in my life because I enjoyed what I did. He figured out a way to get paid for inventing things, which is what he loved, invented various things. So when you wake up every day with a fire in the belly, you're excited to go to work, and you're also good at it, naturally you're most likely going to succeed there. I know there's politics and other factors involved, but if you apply it with humility and the right approach, you're most likely going to have success, and then you'll most likely be recognized for it, and people are willing to pay you for that. And so that's what finding that intersection means.
Do you think this is becoming more and more common today, the more people you talk to, that people are having this kind of not feeling right about what they're doing, with AI and career shifts, uncertainty in the world? Is that something you're coming across more often?
100%. Yeah, I'll be in Denmark in a week and at a big conference about AI and the impact it's having on people and their jobs, and how you can learn agentic AI and the things beyond just what we're doing with ChatGPT, et cetera, and Claude. And so, as you and I talked about in the green room, AI is coming into, especially people of our age, over 40 years old, potentially be downsized in our jobs because we're at a higher level of our pay band, and the company says, okay, but I can have AI do a big part of what you do, maybe with a younger person managing it, the AI, but having the core functions. And so I think it's so important for you to analyze right now, it might be critical for you to figure out, what are my core interests? What are my core abilities? Where do they intersect? Where can I shine? And in the environment we're in, what assets do I bring to the table that AI can't replicate? For instance, in my job, it's relationships. So I'm the chief customer officer of the world's largest transportation software company, Modaxo. And what cannot be replicated is relationships that I build as chief customer officer with the top executives of transit agencies from London, Andy Lord there, who's head of TfL, to New York City, Critchlow, to, Canada and Vancouver, all over the world, all these CEOs of transit systems. I have good, solid relationships with them. And I do that through thought leadership material that we build through podcasts, our podcast Transit Unplugged, our TV show on YouTube, which has 1 million views per episode now, Transit Unplugged TV. We're building relationships with people that AI can't replicate. AI can give information, but it's right in my wheelhouse too, because that's what I love. And so I've been able to figure out the part of what I love that's you can monetize it. My company can monetize it.
So let's get some practical awareness for people listening. Some tips that what do they recognise now? How can someone? I'll try and wrap these 2 or 3 points into one too, because you might. How can someone tell they're outgrowing their career, and what are the warning signs of their misalignment, and what patterns from our past do we ignore that point to purpose?
For your listeners, Mark, I'd say it's 2 main inflection points in their life. One is the midlife crisis, which normally happens in your 40s. You look back at the previous 20 years of your life and you're like, how the heck did I get here? This is not what I wanted to do. I've still got maybe another 20 years, a chance to do it again, do it right this time. That's when people make silly decisions, breaking up with their spouse, buying a sports car, their traditional, items people look at. But it's also a chance to reevaluate your career and say, let's game this out. Where am I in 15, 20 years if I stay with exactly what I'm doing now? Am I going to be happy there? If the answer is no, now's the time to figure that out. And again, I'm not advocating blowing up your life, quitting your job, breaking up your family, all that. What I'm saying is figure it out. Get the basic information you need about yourself. Uncover your personal treasure map. You're hardwired to do things. You're hardwired to like things. Figure out what they are. Take an afternoon on a Saturday, turn off social media, get by yourself in a room, and just think and write down, on the left side of the paper, all the things that you love. You look back through your life. When did time go by real fast? What are the hobbies I'm doing that, I go out in the garage on the weekend and I'm like, my wife comes out and says, it's dinner time. And you're like, what, really? Well, what were you doing right then? What made time fly but so much? Figure that out about yourself. Take some time to be introspective. I'm not really one for what I call navel gazing, too much, but you do need to do it now and then. And then figure out the other end, all the things that you've gotten awards for at work, not what your mother thought you were good at, right? Your mom thinks you're good at everything, but what other people have recognized you for, and just write them all down and then look for the connections. That's what we're talking about. So it's that point in your 40s, but it's also, Mark, when you're near the end of your career. Right? People who maybe are over 50, 55, who've put in their 30 years like I have done. And then you're like, okay, well, what can I do now? I don't want to become a greeter at Harrods or over here in America at Walmart's. I want to do something more meaningful than that. So now's the time to, again, reflect back on your career. What are the things you hated? What, that you don't want to do? What are the things, and then the other two things we've already talked about. And be the author of your own life right now. You're in a position where you can do that. So figure out what it is that will make you feel satisfied, scratch that itch, as they say, inside, and then work toward that. Start looking for jobs there. And you may not get it all in one fell swoop, but you can maybe work part-time and still have your hobby and try to get paid for it. People do all kinds of side gigs now to kind of scratch that itch in their retirement life. I mean, look at my wife. She has had an artistic bent her whole life, and when she kind of wrapped up raising our kids, she went to work for a few years and figured out, this isn't for me. And so now what she's doing is she is painting, and she's becoming an expert artist. I mean, she's really, really good. She took a bunch of courses online for free, and now she's painting watercolors that could be, in my mind, put in museums. She's that good. She's been doing it for about 5 years now. And so she is fulfilled in doing that and is able to, paint paintings for her friends and relatives, things that they want to put in their house, and also she's figured out a way in kind of retirement from her full-time gig of raising our 6 kids that she can feel fulfilled without having the day-to-day responsibilities that she had prior to that. So those two inflection points in your life, you don't want to end up just watching, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy reruns on TV in your retirement. You want to have your life still make you come alive and be fulfilled. And this is a chance to figure out what will do that for you.
And what's what is the first step that someone could take today to make that initial change? Yeah. Is it sitting down and writing, like you said, or is there something you can do?
I think it's deciding that the first step is, right, just like they say in AA, realize you have a problem. I don't know that from personal experience. I just know from watching movies and talking to people who are in it. I'm not much of a drinker myself, but you got to realize, okay, am I happy? So you got to figure that out, right? You're not going to put effort into this unless you feel like I need to make a change, right? So you're probably already there. If you've made it this far in this podcast, you're probably already there and thinking, all right, yeah, you know what? This kind of speaks to me. I get what Paul is saying, what Mark and Paul are talking about. Then the next step is get a tool. There's lots of tools. I'm offering you a free one. It's at my website, findyourxfactor.ai. The very first
Tell us a little bit about that tool then, Paul. What can I get from that tool?
Yeah, so you click on it, and it is an assessment. And it's not an assessment that'll give you the answers. It's just an assessment where you can figure it out yourself, because you really need to figure this out yourself. The book, Find Your X Factor, it'll be available August 11th. You can pre-order it there from Barnes & Noble. It's on, all the main websites where you can get books. All the bookstores around the world, major bookstores, already have it ready to go on August 11th. But you can pre-order the book, and there's stories of people that maybe you can relate to. I've got vignettes of 8 top leaders in their field, from sports stars to top legal folks to top business folks, the guy that turned General Motors around. These are all people I know through my career, and I asked them to write a vignette about how they found their X factor, how they found that intersection between their interests and abilities, and how it manifested itself at work where they were able to have great success, recognized by the world of great success. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at the book, but right now you can start, because it's not available till August 11th. You can pre-order it, but go and look at the tool, fill it all out, and use that as kind of a ladder to help you figure out what's there, because you don't want to climb the ladder of success, Mark, your whole life, only to find out at the end it was leaning against the wrong wall. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is the ladder's leaning against the right wall of your life and career, where you're going to be satisfied, fulfilled, and make a difference.
So we'll put all the links to your website and everything down there for people. Thanks for that. Do you want to show us the cover? You give me a flash before we go on.
This is the book, Find Your X Factor. It's about 270 pages. Sorry, no pictures, but nice words and fun and design. Yeah. A great book designer designed it. It's by Morgan James, the publisher. And I've already did a presentation on it, Mark, 2 weeks ago in Boston to a group of 75 executives. And the core concepts, I walked them through, workshopped it in their own lives, and I can't tell you the responses I got. Last week I was on a big famous podcast out of LA, and I sent the book ahead of time to the guests, to the hosts, and the lady Gwen said, Paul, this is practical philosophy. And I thought that's a great analogy for it. It's practical, it gives you tools, but it's also a philosophical approach. So that's what the book is about.
Excellent. Well, I'll definitely be getting a copy of that just to have a read through. But I can hear people shouting at me now. That my biggest fear, I can't just start over. Surely, how can people realign without risking everything? Do you feel?
So 3 steps I'll give you. The first step is figure out what are your interests and your abilities. And then number 2, figure out where they intersect. And then number 3, look for opportunities in your current job, just like I did in the job that I hated, where you can fulfill some of that. If you are creative enough, you'll be able to find something you can do at work. It could be that there's nothing, that you're locked in, you're a factory worker, your job is to put a widget on every day, although robots have taken a lot of those jobs, but maybe your job is you just say there's nothing here. Well, maybe you can find a hobby, right, that you can do to start that, and then you could start looking for that. Or you look for a job that has something, but you obviously don't want to jump out of the fire, out of the frying pan into the fire. So the best suggestion is figure out what it is that will scratch your itch, and then look for a way to at least partially do it at your current work. And it may be extra work that you don't get paid for, like my job was. I'm happy to do that. Just recently, in my current job, my boss this year, normally I do content creation and connection, and he wanted me to do something different to add on to that. And it's something that they may have, normally you may say, well, why don't I get paid for that? But you know what? It's something I love doing. So it's going to make me more valuable to the company, and it's something that'll scratch more of my itch. And so I'm like, absolutely, I would love to do that. Thanks for the opportunity. And so, look for opportunities at your current work to find that spot, that intersection. Usually it's one or the other, right? It's either something that you enjoy that you're not doing now, or maybe you're in a job that you really enjoy but you're not good at, and you got to build your skill sets. And so it might be for you, it's taking a course. Maybe your job is you've been able to fake it till you make it, but you haven't made it yet because you can't fake this. And so it could be you need to take some courses. So that could be the step you need to take now. You're in a job you enjoy, but you're just not good enough at it to really succeed. Don't get fired, get trained. Build yourself up. My dad taught me, early on, always be improving yourself. So read a book, listen to some podcasts, take a course at the local community college or whatever you can. Online courses, they're free in a lot of places. Don't just sit at home at night watching TV or going out bowling or going to the pub. Take some time to improve yourself so you can be better at the skill sets you need.
And these are the small versus big pivots. So it's not just throw it all in and just have a go. It's make some small changes first, and hopefully that will lead you down, as they say, if the door's semi-open, you keep on pushing, they're open, and you carry on walking through. And that's a good example of what you've got there. So, let's get some actualization, a bit of fulfillment for the next minute or so. What does the alignment work actually feel like?
So if you're in an organization, it feels like you're hitting on all 8 cylinders, is what I say. If you want to use an old engine analogy, right? It's not a hop step. The people in the organization around you, when they are self-actualized on Maslow's hierarchy, like you're working to become, you feel fulfilled. You're doing something you can be successful at, and you're recognized by it, by others for it. So when you get those 3 things, you feel fulfilled, right? Your team around you is all working together toward the same thing, and you have success, and then you're recognized for it. That's what it feels like. You feel like you're self-actualized.
So, and what do you think changes then when someone finds their X factor?
I think you become a unified person. You're not fighting against yourself. You're not looking elsewhere for fulfillment. I mean, not to get too philosophical, Mark, but I think especially for men, we find fulfillment a lot of times in external factors because we're not fulfilled internally. So we look to sports, and we become raving lunatic fans of sports teams, or we play video games. Even as adult men, we're playing games for teenagers because we're winning on the video game. Men have this sense where we have to compete and we have to win. I think it's the testosterone in us or something, And so if you're not getting that itch scratched at work, you're going to find other ways. And so the way you can, just think about how am I spending my time? If you're constantly looking for ways, you might be gambling online, looking to win, money gambling, those kind of things. Or there may be illicit things going on in your life that you shouldn't be doing because you're trying to numb the pain of not feeling fully integrated. These are all clues that you can use to identify to yourself, wait a minute, I'm not integrated as a man or a woman. I need to have my inner self all together. And I think it's best when you can take all of that and apply it to what you're doing for a living. It's what you do most of the time you're awake, right? You wake up in the morning, you're home for an hour or two, then you go and you're working either at your house or at work for 8, 9, 10 hours, then you have a couple hours at night and you have weekends. So most of your waking hours are spent doing something for money. If you can be fully integrated at work, at least 80%, you feel satisfied and you don't feel like you need to spend time doom scrolling on Instagram because that's just numbing. Instead, you feel fulfilled and you're looking for more ways to do work that will make you feel even more fulfilled internally with what you're doing because you're internally aligned.
Then you feel fulfillment is realistic for everyone, or is it a luxury?
I think for 80% of people it is, yeah. I think that you can feel fulfilled. There's the old Pareto principle, 20% of the work gets 80% of the results. But I also think 80% of people can be fulfilled in their life if they can align themselves, which takes self-knowledge. Too many of us don't take the time to do a deep introspection and find out what is it that's my inner alignment? What is my bent? How can I lean into my bent instead of trying to just numb it because I had a few attempts at it as a young person and I failed or I got made fun of and then I've shied away from it ever since then. No, lean back into that now as an adult and figure out what's the right way to do it so you can become successful. Not doing anything crazy, just figuring out what your inner core interests are and your abilities are, looking for alignment. I think that's where you sense more satisfaction, where you don't feel the need to numb yourself to keep the pain down and keep the dissatisfaction down.
Well, it's been great, Paul. We're nearly closing up. I'd always do a quick fire round, just a quick one line or one thing, or it might spur you into something else. I don't know. One belief about careers you've changed your mind on.
I always said, don't start a job just for the money. And what I learned is don't stay in a job just for the money because it's soul killing. I always was just the first part of that, and then I realized, no, there's another part. Once you get there, don't just stay there because of the money. It's not worth it.
No. So the best piece of advice for someone feeling stuck right now?
Look inside yourself. Take some time to quiet yourself and meditate and see where am I feeling the pain. Metaphorically speaking, I mean, after a certain age, we all have pain in our lower back, it seems like. But metaphorically speaking, where am I feeling the biting, the sensation of pain? And address that right now. Figure out a solution for it. You're smart enough, you can figure it out. How do I get rid of these things that are biting at me so that I can then, you have immediate things that are happening you've got to resolve. right? It's what Maslow's hierarchy teaches us, right? You have to get the bottom basics, physical needs met before you get to self-actualization. So start working your way up that pyramid.
And I don't know. I don't believe. I was going to ask something. I'm going to ask something else. I can't work out why I've not asked this before to anyone. Seeing as this is what the podcast is called. But what does not finished yet mean to you?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, Mark. What has not finished yet? So, you can reach the penultimate job in your career and feel like, okay, I've done it. I have reached the top. I mean, as you mentioned, I've kind of done it in 3 careers where I've, recognized as number one. In 2016, I won America's #1 award for the #1 person in public transportation. It's given out by the 50 departments of transportation from the 50 states, and I got the President's Award. So that was 10 years ago. But I'm not done yet. What I'm done is, that's for operations, operating transit systems. So now I've pivoted, and so that's what you can do in life, right? You can pivot from what you've built up. So now I teach a course on public transportation at Villanova University to graduate students, right? I started a podcast, started a TV show. So not finished yet means you may have finished the bulk of the one factor or function of what your interests and abilities are. Now look for the next phase, the next plateau. You've plateaued out, but you don't, everyone, like we know after a certain age, we know what happens to guys, especially because I've studied them, who retire completely and go out on the golf course and they're dead. They're dead in a year or 2 or 3, if not physically, metaphorically, they're dead. They've lost everything, in their life, their interests or whatever, and you can't do that. So I think especially those of us of a certain age need to make sure that we don't let that happen to us. I get it. There's a time to take a break after you finished a career, maybe 3 or 6 months, do what they call the honeydew list, do the stuff around the house you wanted to do some traveling, but then you need to get back into using those skills, the wisdom that you've learned over those years in some way and passing it on to the next generation.
Okay, and finally, what's the best bit of advice that was ever given to you?
That's
And
good.
it don't have to be a work one, it can be a personal one.
I'll go back to what my father taught me, and I already mentioned it once, is one of the best things was to always be improving yourself. In this day and age especially, we cannot rest on our laurels and say, hey, I know all about that. No, you don't. We are in a fundamental shift of the knowledge economy with AI coming on. So you don't know it all, and you need to. And if you think you do, there's a problem there. You need to grow your knowledge base. I mean, I'm 60 years old, and I'm taking courses now in AI, agentic AI, et cetera, because I want to prepare myself for what's next. And so, I could say, I went to law school. I've got a Juris Doctorate. I've got 21 years of formal education, plus I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books over the years, of self-improvement books and biographies. I'm reading right now a great biography of Winston Churchill and Joe Kennedy. It's called, those two families together. And I love all that stuff, but I want to constantly be improving myself, especially in this new era of technology, so we don't get left behind at whatever age we're at.
Absolutely. Well, look, guys, if this episode's hit home, it's probably, as you said, Paul, already, you're probably closer to your next chapter than you think. If you're still listening, then that's the case. Make sure you check out Paul's upcoming book, Find Your X Factor, and connect with him. We'll put the links to the websites and everything down on there. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share with someone who needs it. And remember, you're not finished yet. Thank you very much, Paul, for coming.
It was my honor.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Please see the links to all our socials. Until next time, remember, you're not finished yet.